Yeah. Since I'm going to be talking about men's issues on social media, I figured the mandatory outfit would be douchebag glasses indoors during daylight. But then I remembered I don't like any of you. Left wing, right wing, upside wing, down wing, chicken wing, whatever. You're all terribly, terribly wrong. And watching you handle this issue in the public debate is sort of like watching a bunch of people basically try to dissect and destroy society through a gangbang using their mind. It's very ridiculous. It's gross. Please stop. No? Okay, you're not gonna stop? Well, I guess I'm gonna have to partake in this mental goo myself. And for starters, I've noticed that suddenly there's a big uptick in mainstream media about this issue of masculinity crisis. And how do you even describe it? Basically, men feel like lost losers, don't know what to do with themselves, and it used to be something that they like to make fun of them about that, call them a loser, and like for decades, the mainstream media has basically been grooming men into thinking of themselves as aggressors, useless, potentially something bad. We all know what the rhetoric has been in mainstream media about what men are, according to feminism. But then, eventually, all of that left wing grooming had a palatable effect, and certain men decided to commit very violent, atrocious acts. The incel thing became a very talked about term, and now people are scared, so now they're talking about it in a different way. They're trying to have an understanding tone of what is wrong with these losers. They're trying to have an understanding tone, and it's interesting to see how certain left wing feminist writers and voices are trying to cash in on the problem that they've contributed to. Now they're trying to present themselves like these misunderstood radicals who simply want to actually help men, and feminism can be beneficial for men, yada, yada, yada. You can imagine what the spin is there, right? So they're trying to whitewash their own guilt. And it's really annoying. Watching mainstream media cover this topic is profoundly without any form of wit or insight. Somehow they always just fumble the ball on this one. They present a lot of analysis and perspective, but really no answers. They had some academic on TV recently here in Sweden talking about how there's no actual men's crisis, definitely not feminism. It's because of industrialization. Yes, society is changing, and that's why men feel like losers on a collective level, and it's happened before when agriculture stopped being a thing. Like, what? Can you please just wipe your ass with that thesis and not present it to the public? Because it's really annoying, and they had some moron journalist woman to give an example of what male isolation looks like. She interviewed a redneck Swede with 7 friends whom he meets on a regular basis and parties with, and he has a pretty well-paying job. And really the only problem with male isolation there is that in their little village, there's not enough women, so you basically get 10 dicks for every hole, and that sort of competition just gets sort of icky. And then they went to Romania and tried to interview Andrew Tate. So that was like, what did I learn there? It's awful. It's really awful. And the right wing, of course, are reveling in the topic. It's easy for them to be like, yeah, see destructive feminism there, what it does. It has created all these violent incels. But half of these right wing political figures are the kind of people that would have bullied you in high school. I mean, their credibility is zero. When they speak of these men as losers in every other venue except when it's time to cash in by pretending that you feel sorry for them. So I really don't feel like the right-wing outlets are any more credible. In fact, they've whether you look at the more let's look at masculinity online as a spectrum, right? So on the far end here, you have the manosphere, with the radical ideas of dating, the Fresh and Fit podcast, the all of the douchebag pickup artists, yada yada yada. You have that here, and then you have a more common sense center sort of position here with Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, and Andrew Tate is like here. So that's the spectrum, and it may look like there's varying degrees of thought and ideological analysis, but really, they're all saying the same thing. They're all presenting the same solution, and it's bland and it's materialistic. They're all telling you the same shit. The clean your room routine. They're telling you to go to the gym, meditate, maybe, and focus on your career, your ambition, and the other stuff will just sort of click into place eventually. The house and the family and yada yada yada. But if you have any sort of whiff of famous and successful individuals, if you've ever met any, been around them, like high achieving individuals, if you've even been close enough to be able to sniff their farts, you probably would have figured out by now that none of those things will actually make you happy. And all of the things that Andrew Tate is saying are extremely stupid. Money and women and cars wouldn't really transform what you feel like on the inside. So working hard to get all those things would just leave you with the same feeling that every successful person eventually encounters, the feeling of emptiness despite having accomplished your goals. So that's like a different problem altogether. And so my problem is you're all wrong and you're all dumb and you're all annoying to listen to. Okay? Getting a job, even if it's a fun job, is not gonna solve any sort of male crisis. And getting a family doesn't solve that hollow, empty feeling inside either. It's a feeling that's been described for thousands of years in established religions. So it probably doesn't have much to do with get money, get pussy, yada yada yada. And that's basically what Jordan Peterson is saying. If we're gonna be crass about it, very interesting guy, a lot of interesting thoughts, good books, but fundamentally, getting your shit together doesn't necessarily accomplish anything in terms of that empty void inside. That's a mystical thing. It's a completely different thing to, and I've noticed this with the type of people that follow Jordan Peterson. And when he blew up, I noticed that every Swedish person adopted him as their dad. So with Western men in general, there's this fatherlessness that seems to be a generational problem. And I can see why he's popular, but the solution ultimately is futile, right? You can invest in self-improvement and success all you want, but none of it is going to matter unless you have the correct programming in here with various beliefs, ideas, and practices. So I feel like there's a huge gap in what's described as the male crisis, the crisis of masculinity, the crisis of walking around and feeling like a ghost, disconnected, alienated, not really having community, and the feeling of being alone despite having many friends. All those things I find are more satisfiably articulated and discussed within Christian literature than in any of the public debate or any of the political factions that are trying to mentally gangbang society together into pieces. They're all very materialistic in their interpretation of what men need. And it's tied to very outdated ideas. What needs to be discussed is the metaphysical and the spiritual and the transformation of consciousness. And not in a creepy, new age, guru, might molest you while you're tripping balls on DMT in a jungle kind of way, but in an actual healthy way that I've really only seen one guy cover thus far, and it's an Orthodox priest. So I'm going to link his video in the corner and hope you give him a look. All I wanted to do was just touch on this topic and say, if you're a man watching and you feel confused, you probably should be confused. You're being gangbanged by a violent array of perspectives that are deeply flawed, deeply biased, and deeply compartmentalized. So everyone is giving you their shtick, their idea, their ideological solution to the problem of that emptiness inside. And it's gonna get confusing. It's all horse shit. What you need to do is maybe not listen too much to a guy on the internet, whether it's Jordan Peterson, me, or him, or that. Let's start there.